in InRetroSpect.
Welcome to episode 3 of InRetroSpect. In this episode, I will be looking at one of Rockstar's most critically acclaimed titles, which takes its inspiration from one of the most iconic genres in cinema history, the Western. In this episode, I will be discussing Rockstar San Diego's follow-up to the 2004 title Red Dead Revolver, Red Dead Redemption.
I rode in a gang. They left me to die after I'd been shot. I left the gang after the gang left me. I tried to go straight. I did. Then I got me more trouble. You can't change, John!
We don't do deals with outlaws, boy.
Yeah, you do!
You are the bounty hunter, huh?
When looking for cinematic inspiration for Red Dead Redemption, perhaps more so than any other Rockstar title, the scope of films I could look at was extremely wide. So, after considering a number of options, I decided to look at Sergio Leone's 1968 title, Once Upon a Time in the West. Once Upon a Time in the West follows the story of the struggle for the land of Sweetwater, a piece of land whose name bears resemblance to the town of Blackwater in Rockstar's Western. In addition to this struggle, the story also follows the pursuit of the villain Frank by the film's hero, a mysterious gunman with a vendetta against him. This is also a theme which can be found in Red Dead Redemption as well. To examine the role film has played in Red Dead Redemption, I will be looking at the similarities and differences in both sources' visual landscape and their use of sound and music. The first element I'm going to look at is the visual landscape of both Red Dead Redemption and Once Upon a Time in the West. What is the visual style of each? How are they similar? Where can I see the cinematic inspiration? But also, in which aspects do they differ? The camera pans across a river as a steamboat moors at its dock and a group of eager passengers wait to disembark. We follow an unnamed protagonist as he's escorted from the boat through the town of Blackwater and placed on a train. We see as the train slices through the landscape and watch closely as the man surveys the passing environment. This is how Red Dead Redemption begins. At this point, mystery surrounds the protagonist of John Marston. But more importantly, it is here that the second protagonist of this game is introduced, the landscape. The world that John Marston inhabits is a sparse, bare, deserted land with small towns dotted throughout. The only consistent sign of civilization are the dirt roads and train tracks which cut through the land, a sign of the impending industrial age. It is this sparse, empty land, and the fact that the game opens with a train journey, that immediately link it to Once Upon a Time in the West. Both the game and film open with a scene at a train station, and the resemblance cannot be mistaken when you compare the slow, extended shots of the vast deserted landscape. But the visual connection stemming from the camera is not the biggest and most striking similarity of Red Dead Redemption. That is very much the colour scheme the game uses. In the research I undertook for this podcast, I watched many different films, and the colour scheme is a constant throughout, and it is this colour scheme which Red Dead Redemption has followed. The sky is pale blue, but the environment is an assortment of browns, dark greens and golds, creating a constant hue which gives the impression of the dusty atmosphere of this time period. However, as many similarities as there are with these two titles, I found there was one shot, or one style of shot, which is evident in Once Upon a Time in the West, but absent from Red Dead Redemption, and that is the use of extreme close-ups on the faces of characters. In many westerns, this type of shot is often used when introducing characters, and also in the signature duels that happen throughout the genre. And this is just as evident in Once Upon a Time in the West. In the final climactic duel between the characters of Harmonica and Frank, the camera focuses in on the faces of the duelists and holds the shot on the close-up of Harmonica. You see here any flinch in his face, waiting for that moment to draw. This is something which doesn't really appear in Red Dead Redemption, and due to the clear nod the game makers make in other aspects of the visuals, it is clearly a design decision to not include this type of shot. For me, this loses the tension that is present in the movies, and makes the duel, which is perhaps the most iconic image of the Wild West genre, into nothing more than a frivolous minigame, which does not carry the emotional weight as it does in the movie. Now, I understand that perhaps the reason for this is that in a movie, the entire film builds up to this one moment, whereas in Red Dead Redemption, rather than building up to one moment, the aim was to create a world of the Western, and the aspect of the duel is therefore present throughout. However, in my opinion, by taking this important feature of the genre and almost downgrading it, you remove what is such a memorable cinematic moment. I think of all cinematic genres, the music found in westerns is arguably the most memorable. 4 simple bars from Ennio Morricone's score from The Good, the Bad and the Ugly immediately encapsulates the entire world of the Wild West. Very few pieces of music are so associated with its cinematic genre as those 4 bars. As longtime collaborator with Sergio Leone, Ennio Morricone also wrote the score for Once Upon a Time in the West, and his distinctive sound can be heard throughout the score for Red Dead Redemption as well. One of the clearest and most striking sounds in the Red Dead Redemption soundtrack is the use of the harmonica. Not only can the sound of the harmonica be found in Once Upon a Time in the West score, but it in fact plays a significant role. The character played by Charles Bronson is known as Harmonica, purely due to his playing of the instrument in the film. As I have stated, the music in westerns is vitally important, and so when Rockstar produced Red Dead Redemption, it is clear that the soundscape of the game was extremely important, and the music that can be heard throughout is always consistent with the situation and the environments the characters find themselves in. A great example of this can be heard when you compare the music of when John Marston is in America to when he crosses the border to Mexico. First, here is an example of the music that plays whilst in America. And you can now compare it and see the difference to the music for when John Marston finds himself in Mexico. It is clear that Rockstar paid a lot of attention to the soundtrack in order to capture the essence of the Wild West in its score. One of the highlights for me appears around a third of the way through the game, where John Marston is travelling across Mexico, and a song plays which was written by folk singer Jose Gonzalez specifically for this game.
Step in front of a runaway train, just to feel alive again, pushing forward through the night, aching just to blur aside. It's so far away. It's so far away. Cold wind blows into the skin. Can't believe the state you're in. It's so far away. It's so far away.
This type of track demonstrates the effort that has gone into the soundtrack for this game, and for me it is the music which gives it its identity and is the biggest connection to the cinematic world. It is a soundtrack which stands alongside those from all of cinema. However, as with the cinematic visuals, there is one aspect missing from the game which is so effective in Once Upon a Time in the West, and strangely enough, it is the absence of sound. A technique used in Once Upon a Time in the West, among other westerns, is the use of silence to build tension. Often, the sound only comes from the environment and nature around them. In Once Upon a Time in the West, the opening scene sees three men waiting on an empty platform for a train to arrive. The only sound you hear is a nearby windmill, the drip of a water leak, and the buzzing of a fly. It is this feature which is absent from Red Dead Redemption, which, in addition to the points made previously, for me remove a lot of the tension which is built throughout the movie. Whilst I accept the difficulty in building tension when you are creating such an open world game, this tension is my favourite part of westerns, and it's a shame that the same tension cannot be built up in the game as well. It is impossible to not see the cinematic inspiration when playing Red Dead Redemption. And I would argue that of all of Rockstar's catalogue, it is Red Dead Redemption which wears its cinematic heart on its sleeve the most, whether it is in the vistas which stretch out into the distance, the golden hue which covers each image, or the soaring soundtrack which captures everything about what the Wild West is. It is here that I end my quest into the world created by Sergio Leone and reimagined by Rockstar. And so now I hand the floor back to you. Please let me know what you think. Do you agree that the tension which appears in Once Upon a Time in the West is missing from Red Dead Redemption? And is this better or worse for it? Also, do you agree that Red Dead Redemption is the best example of Rockstar using cinematic influences in their games? I'd love to hear from you. Leave a message on InRetrospectPodcast.com, leave a review on iTunes, or follow us on Twitter at www.twitter.com/InRetroSpect. Until next time, goodbye.
Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie where the coyotes wail and the wind blows free. And when I die, don't bury me 'neath the western sky on the lone prairie. Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie. These words came soft and painfully from the pallid lips of a youth who lay on his dying bed at the break of day.
Next week on InRetroSpect, it's a cold day in hell as Sam picks apart the American dream with Max Payne.
You don't have to stretch much of your imagination to see why Rockstar wanted to publish Max Payne. Sure, the initial attraction was the strong influence and unique approach of Chinese cinema that ran through the title like a stick of rock, but Remedy had something more than this. They had the idea for a title that, with the right direction from the right company, could just be a successful franchise. With hindsight, it's easy now to see what Rockstar was planning back then, but part of publishing the first game was, I think, a direct intention to take the series down the path that they wanted.
So are Rockstar a little closer to heaven as a publisher as well as a developer? That's all to come next week on InRetroSpect.